Now, in the last class, we did cell as the basic of life, right? So on last Sunday, we did AS biology. From today onwards, I'll start using the IMAT syllabus instead of the A-level syllabus because all of you are IMAT students. So last class, we did cell as the basic of life in AS biology, and I explained a few things here. So I did cell theory, right? Cell theory was where I explained that cells were made up of organelles. And then I didn't do cell size, which I'll do today, but we did prokaryote and eukaryotic cell. We also did animal and plant cell. We didn't do viruses as well. Now, I also did the structure and function of the cell membrane, but from here onwards, we stopped. So all of this we'll do in the coming days. But today I will focus on a few things. I'll focus on cell size. We'll also do viruses and bacteria. And we'll also do one function of the cell. We'll do one organelle today, which is the mitochondria, because mitochondria is very important and it has a separate chapter in A levels. So I'll focus on this today as well. Now, let's start with cell size first. So cell size is, what is cell size? You need to know the size of different organelles. So there are questions in the IMAT which will ask you the different, how big or small a cell is. So the biggest cell, the biggest organelle, sorry, in our cell is called the nucleus. And you also need to know the size of the organelles that I've written here. So nucleus is around 5 micrometer or 5,000 nanometer long. Now, do you guys know micrometer or nanometer? If not, I'll explain that today as well, because this comes in physics as well as biology. So do you understand what these units are, or should I explain them? What? Yes, I should explain them, or you know them? You know them, good. But I'll also explain a little bit about them. Uh, picometer is the smallest unit, right? Smallest comes picometer, then comes nanometer. Nanometer is smaller than picometer. Nanometer is bigger than picometer. And after nanometer comes something called micrometer. So these three, right? These three are the most important: picometer, nanometer, and micrometer. Picometer is 10 raised to power negative 12. Nanometer is 10 raised to power negative 9. And micrometer is 10 raised to power negative 6. So pico is the smallest unit. So if nucleus was pico, then nucleus would be the smallest, but it's not the smallest, it's the biggest one. So I have the picometer, which is the smallest. It's 10 raised to power negative 12. Nanometer is bigger, 10 raised to power negative 9. Micrometer is 10 raised to power negative 6, right? So these three are the main units that you need to know. Now, coming back, right? So nucleus is the biggest organelle there is, and it's 5 micrometer or 5,000 nanometer. Then comes the chloroplast. So nucleus is the biggest, then comes chloroplast, centriole, and then mitochondria. So you need to know a lot about mitochondria. Mitochondria is around 0.5 to 1 micrometer long. And then comes these two organelles. These are the smallest organelles in our body. It's the lysosome. Lysosome is the vesicle that contains enzymes, and its job was to engulf dead organelles. So it acted like our digestive system of the cell. Now, ribosomes are smaller than lysosome. In fact, ribosome is the smallest organelle in a cell. And again, ribosome's job was to make proteins. So ribosome is around 25 nanometer long, and lysosome is bigger than ribosome, right? So these were the arrangement of organelles. So nucleolus, then chloroplast, then centriole, then mitochondria, lysosome, and finally ribosome, which is the smallest. And nucleus is the biggest, right? So now that we are done with this, I want to go to mitochondria, because mitochondria has a separate chapter. So what is mitochondria? Mitochondria is rod shaped, and it's able to change shape and move in cells. And mitochondria, right, is present in cells that need energy, because I explained in the last class, mitochondria makes energy in the form of ATP. Again, it's 0.5 to 1 micrometer in diameter, and it's double membraned. Remember this, it's double membraned. It has two membranes. So the first thing that my mitochondria has is the matrix. And the matrix is small circular mitochondrial DNA. So the matrix has small circular mitochondrial DNA. It also has 70S ribosomes. Now, 70S ribosomes are present in, again, it's present in mitochondria and the chloroplast. So 70S is present in mitochondria and the chloroplasts. I wrote chloroplast wrong. Ignore this. So it's present in mitochondria and chloroplast, and what the job of matrix is that it synthesizes mitochondrial proteins. Now, the inner membrane, or the cristae, right? It's called cristae, is the site for electron transmission chain and oxidative phosphorylation. Again, I explained this in the last class, what these two things are. And inner membrane is folded. The reason it's folded is because this increases the surface area for ATP synthase. ATP synthase is the process or the enzyme which synthesizes ATP. So the job of ATP synthase is to synthesize ATP. And the inner membrane is impermeable to H plus ion. Why is this? Because you will maintain a proton gradient. So the inner membrane cannot let H plus ions pass through, so that it will maintain a proton gradient. Now, the outer membrane of the mitochondria is more permeable to small molecules compared to the inner membrane. And the outer membrane contains transport proteins to move pyruvate into mitochondria. So when pyruvate from glycolysis moves into the mitochondria for link reaction and Krebs cycle, this outer membrane will let pyruvate pass through. So the job of pyruvate is to transport proteins. It has transport proteins which allow the movement of pyruvate into the mitochondria. And finally, mitochondria has the intermembrane space, which is more acidic, because this is the place where H plus ions are pumped into. So H plus ions are stored here, and it allows accumulation of H plus ions. So intermembrane space allows H plus ions to be stored. And the reason it's acidic is because of this. So now that we are done with mitochondria, right, I want to go on to viruses. So viruses are these organisms that are non-living. Why are they non-living? Because viruses can only reproduce by infecting living cells. So the way they become living is by infecting our living cells. And they use protein synthesizing machinery of our host or the host to replicate more proteins. So viruses will use the protein synthesizing machinery of the host cell that it infected to replicate more proteins. Now, viruses, this is a virus, by the way, and viruses have DNA or RNA. It can't have both. DNA can be double-stranded or single-stranded. So viruses will either have double-strand DNA, single-strand DNA, or an RNA. So you can see here, this is DNA or RNA and its genetic code. And it will also have, viruses will also have a protein code called capsid. So this protein coat is called capsid and it acts like a membrane, right? So the other thing that viruses have is called a lipid envelope. Now, the reason I'm not showing this right here is because lipid envelope is not always present in viruses. Only some viruses will have lipid envelope. And what is lipid envelope? It's this outer membrane. It's like a membrane and it's outside the capsid. Now, the last thing that all viruses will have is proteins on the capsid. So all the viruses will have some kind of protein on their capsid, right? This is the capsid. This is the capsid. And viruses will have proteins on that capsid. So a few things for viruses are that viruses are, they are non-cellular structure. What do I mean by non-cellular? They do not have their own cells to make them living. They will attack the host and replicate themselves using the protein synthesizing machinery of the host. So viruses have no plasma membrane, cytoplasm, or ribosomes. These are essential for making a cell be able to live. So they do not have ribosome, cytoplasm, or plasma membrane. They have ribosome. What viruses have ribosome? So how protein are formed? Viruses do not have ribosomes. This protein is already present when the virus was born, but I'll check and let's check. Do viruses have ribosomes? I don't think they have ribosomes. Viruses have no ribosomes, mitochondria, or other organelles. I took this from Google. Let me just, yeah. You can see the screenshot, right? This is taken from Google. Viruses have no ribosomes, mitochondria, or other organelles. They are completely dependent on the cellular host for energy production, as I said. They depend on the host for ribosomes for protein. Yes. Because they don't have ribosomes, they can't make proteins, and therefore they can't they can't basically replicate themselves. So they don't have ribosomes, cytoplasm, mitochondria, all these organelles. They will use the protein synthesizing machinery of the host. Why will they use the protein synthesizing machinery? This is a fancy name for ribosomes because they don't have ribosomes. So moving on, right? This was all about viruses. Now, bacteria are prokaryotic cells, so they do not have a nucleus. Bacteria do not have nucleuses. Their genetic information is stored in the form of circular DNA, whereas viruses consist of just nucleic acid enclosed in a protein coat, and their genetic material can be DNA or RNA. I told you earlier, viruses can have DNA or RNA, whereas the bacteria will have circular strand of DNA. All right. And bacteria do not require a host to survive, whereas viruses are entirely dependent on their host and cannot survive without them. Viruses are significantly smaller than bacteria because viruses do not have a lot of organelles. Bacteria have a cell membrane, cell wall, cytoplasm, as well as other organelles such as ribosome, plasmid, flagellum, and pili, whereas viruses possess no such structures. So viruses will have no ribosomes, cell wall, cytoplasm, but bacteria will have all of these. They will have cell membrane, cell wall, cytoplasm, ribosomes, and plasmids, and some bacteria will have these things as well. Flagellum and pili is present in some bacteria, right? Now, let's do this question. Which of the following type of nucleic acid are found in viruses? I took this from IMAT. Single-strand DNA, double-strand DNA, or RNA? I'll give you guys 2 minutes to solve this. Someone said E. I'll wait for others. Okay, so let's do the question now. Someone said E, right? So let's start with E. Which of the following type of nucleic acid are found in viruses? So I told you guys earlier, when I go back to viruses, right? Viruses will have 3 kinds of genetic code. They can have a DNA, which can be double strand or single strand. So these are 2 types of genetic material they can have. They can have DNA, which is double stranded, or DNA, which is single stranded. And they can also have RNA. So each virus can have 3 of these genetic code: double stranded DNA, single stranded DNA, or RNA. So when I go back to the question, right, it's saying that which of the following type of nucleic acid or genetic code is found in viruses? I told you earlier, viruses will have single-stranded DNA. They can also have double-stranded DNA or RNA. Now, these 3, right, they can't be present all at once. So that's what confusing here. That's what is confusing here. It's that you guys are thinking that they're saying that all of this is present in a virus. No, they're asking which type of nucleic acid will viruses have. Will they have a single-stranded DNA? Yes, they will. Viruses have single-stranded DNA. Will viruses have double-stranded DNA? Yes, viruses do have double-stranded DNA. Do viruses have RNA? They will have RNA, but they won't have all of these 3 at once. So when you said E, right, 2 and 3, double-stranded DNA, RNA, that's wrong. The right answer is all of them. It's A. Is this clear? Okay, good. So, is there anything else? No, there isn't. Okay, so in the next class, which is on Tuesday, right, I'll do this transport across the membrane. This is a very important chapter. And I finished cell structure and their function. So for chapter 1, right? For chapter 1, I'm only left with transport across the membrane. This is what's left. And cell division and cell cycle. So I'm only left with cell cycle and transport across the membrane. So these 2 chapters will be done this week. So I'll finish with the first chapter of IMAT completely. And I think that's everything there is today. Yeah. Yeah, we're done with today. Thank you everyone for joining. I'll send a question in on Discord for you to solve. And if you can't solve that, just let me know. I'll solve it in the next class. Thank you very much for joining.